Good morning, boys and girls. This is a Matrix of Mind audio only tape. You should be able to find this on Spotify, and we hope to be back on video fairly soon. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do have a few questions, many questions. To start with, I recently had some foot injury and I'm not able to walk
Oh, I'm
properly.
sorry.
So yeah, basically, doctor told me to avoid walking for a couple of weeks,
What's the
and
injury?
so doctor told me it's like bursitis, so like some just inflamed heel area in the foot.
Okay.
And he told me to just like wait it out and then come back in a couple of weeks. So initially, I was like, my mind started racing, and then I made a conscious choice to not worry about it and let's think about it after 2 weeks. And
Good.
with that, I got peace and I was able to go back to doing the normal stuff, other stuff, and it made me wonder. So if I can do this with this thing, let's say if someone goes through something much harder, so like maybe like permanent disability or things like that,
Yes.
maybe they will be able to do the same thing. Like it's a choice to suffer even in that
Very,
case.
very good. Very good. It's a choice to suffer. Okay, that's very nicely put. It is a choice. It's a choice your mind makes. Now, pain is probably a different matter, right?
Yeah.
Inflammation is definitely a different matter. Uh, and certain illnesses are definitely a different matter, but the suffering that goes along with it is something that you can, at the least, be mitigated, if not obviated, by the mind.
Hmm.
You know what obviate means?
I think eliminated.
Something like that. Why don't you look it up real quick? Other people may not know that word. It's a good word.
Yeah, it says remove.
To remove, right?
Yeah.
To obviate. Okay, go on.
Uh, so I was thinking that the only obstacle to making that choice is my attachment to like to a better state. And it seems like anyone who doesn't know how to deal with attachment, they basically are they basically are bound to suffer. So only people with knowledge and like knowing how to deal with this kind of thing, then they can avoid suffering.
Yes, that's the Buddha's second noble truth, right?
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit tricky though, because you said you and a person, and remember, I mean, when you search for that you or that person or that self, what do you find? You find a bunch of conditioned circumstances. I mean, so the self exists, but as a conditioned idea, as a conditional idea that arises from the interdependent interaction of a number of different thoughts and interactions in society and so on and so forth. So the point is that the person must learn to do this, and it's not easy at first. You've come a long way, and so I think it's important to point out that this is something that one learns how to do. And see, I said one, but what I mean is that the whole complex of the human learns this truth, the Buddha's second uh, noble truth. And that may not be as straightforward as people imagine. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody who's suffering saying, hey, oh, that's all in your mind. Just stop suffering. That's not going to help anybody. They have to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's where a lot of these like scriptures, especially the Hindu scriptures that I have read in the past, are missing. Like they tell to not suffer, they say like to not be worried about outcome, but they don't explain the process on how to do
Right.
that.
Right. Well, that's the Buddhist mind technology that we need so much in the modern world for many, many reasons. But they have been working on these issues for thousands of years, and they do have the method by which to, I don't want to say remove suffering, but to obviate suffering or to mitigate suffering, because that's what they've been working on for thousands of years. And so, but one of the things, of course, is to make a distinction between suffering and pain. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And aren't there these Hindu guys, these fakirs that do things like sleep on nails, or sit on top of a flagpole for like years, or walk through fire, or they do these painful things to show their mind control, to show off their mind control.
Yeah, there are, like, I don't know anyone personally, but I have seen like on news and TV where these kind of people are like shown. But the problem is like the common man, the people I know, the people who live in the world, they don't know how to do it. Like they are just told
Correct.
to do it, and they don't know how to do it.
Yes, no, absolutely. So good. I think that's important for listeners to hear, is that suffering exists, and the second noble truth of the Buddha is there is a path beyond suffering. There's a way to get beyond suffering. There is an end to suffering. The second noble truth. Yeah. Is that the second noble truth?
I think the first one is there is suffering. The second one is there is an end to suffering. Yeah.
No, I think this is the second one. Attachment is the attachment, by which is not a great translation. Attachment, because people.
Yeah, I think the second one is that the origination of suffering is through attachment.
Right, but attachment is a much broader word than might be implied in English. When Westerners, for example, hear the word attachment, they immediately go to their cars or their clothes or their shoe collection or their TV or something like that. But what's meant by the Buddha is something far broader than that, and that's clinging on to concepts, to constructs, to old beliefs that are outdated. And so in the Buddhist teachings, attachment, they sometimes use the word clinging or not letting go or something like that. And this is something they share with the Taoists, of course. And that is that hanging on to a particular concept or identity or organization, those things cause far more, or ego ideal, idea of yourself that you think everybody should adhere to. Those are the attachments that really matter, right? And so that's the second noble truth. The cause of suffering is clinging to outdated constructs or concepts or anything really, for that matter. And then it's the third noble truth. I misspoke earlier. It's the third noble truth that says there is an end to suffering. Okay, good. I'm glad we got that straightened out.
Yeah.
Good.
I think in Buddhist texts they use the word craving.
Craving too. Craving, clinging, attachment, holding on to, not letting go of, identifying with. All right?
Yeah. Yeah. That.
Now, some people get hurt very badly if their car gets keyed, for example. I mean, that hurts them because the car is an extension of their self, right? It's part of their self-image.
Yeah.
Now, if they weren't attached to the car, they didn't identify with the car, they didn't see the car as, an extension of them, they wouldn't suffer if the car was defaced. Yeah. I mean, no one likes it, of course, and I'm not suggesting that you should, go try it out. But what I'm saying is the general principle that the more you call yours, the more vectors of attack there is for you to suffer. And conversely, the less you call yours, the more protected you are from all of those.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that goes so far as to, sometimes people can, I don't want to sound extremist, but sometimes, I'm not suggesting this is a wise thing to do either, but sometimes people are able to dissociate from their bodies and say, yeah, well, there's a body, but what does it have to do with me? You know what I'm saying? It just comes and goes from the dust and to the dust, and it goes through all these adventures and misadventures, but the body is not who I am. and so they don't suffer as much when the body is eventually falls apart and dies.
I think that's the very tricky part, to know that I am not the body.
It is. It's tricky until it's not tricky, and that again, it takes either preparation and diligent practice, or it takes really, really good luck, or sometimes really, really bad luck, interestingly enough. And then dissociation from the body occurs. Well, you have to dissociate from the body in any case, because it's going to start falling apart. It's going to rot and then die, right?
Yeah.
And now, if that were you, I mean, that would be a tragedy. But it's not you, so it's not a tragedy.
I think what I have seen, at least with myself, is when I was like very young, then like there was no issues, like there was no problems. But as body started aging, then initially there was a lot of resistance to like wanting to go back to how it was. But slowly and slowly, mind starts getting used to the new normal, and it keeps on. And I think that's a process that keeps on happening.
It snowballs,
Yeah.
and everyone around you reinforces it.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the things about being on this earth as a human.
Yeah. But I was wondering if there's someone who has to deal with it like suddenly. So like let's say someone like there are like a lot of accidents, or like someone gets into an accident and they lose their limbs, or like someone maybe gets like a cancer diagnosis. So for those people, they don't have time to get used to like body falling apart slowly and slowly. So for them, the only way out is to really know that they are not the body.
Exactly. And so I know of a woman who's a paraplegic. I've known a few, as a physician, so on and so forth. But this particular woman, she's just so full of bitterness and blame and resentment and hatred for the world and for what happened to her and all the things she's going to miss. She's just a very wealthy woman. And in any case, she suffers horribly, right? Compared to other people I've known who haven't been as wealthy, haven't been as entitled, and have been more attuned to greater things than just their, what they expected in life. And, they have a spiritual dimension to them or whatever. And they're not bitter at all. They're not, it's a choice, like you said. And so psychological suffering, the same thing. Now, it may not feel like it sometimes because of the nature of the brain and idea worms, like earworms, there are thought worms too that get locked in there and start running around and causing all kinds of misery. But you can deal with that mischief too. It just takes time. Good. So maybe you're seeing some of the benefits of having a more evolved mind.
Cool.
That's great.
Cool. Yeah, I think that whatever I have learned or experienced is mainly from the books, and also doing it like physically on myself, like doing it actively. And because I read something from a book, but until I apply it in my life, there's no learning from that.
Absolutely. So, all of this is about reality, and the reality in which we live. It's not an abstract theory or concept or construct that you just adopt intellectually. So, although books can be, essentially priceless, right, in helping point the way and save you years and years and years of work, because, like the Sufis, for example, and other texts, they've traveled this road for thousands of years. In the end, you have to do it. It's like recipe book. I mean, those are wonderful. They can save you tons of time and a lot of mistakes and so on and so forth. But if all you do is read the recipe books and you never cook and eat the food, you're missing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And a number of people do that. I've experienced that, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
over intellectualization.
I think what I have also seen with myself, so like I'll give an example. So like earlier I used to read Bhagavad Gita, and in Bhagavad Gita they say do things without being attached to the result of it, and I'll read it and I'll just like move on. But only when I started like contemplating on it and applying in my life, then I realized that it's really hard to let go like that for something I care about, and then it leads to another problem, and then I find something that leads to another problem. So it's only by applying I learned about other problems that come up with that. But yeah, if I just read it, then I will not know about all these things.
Excellent. Yes. These things have to be applied. They're useless if they're not applied.
Yeah.
They're worthless
Yeah.
without application.
Yeah.
It's like, I've recently encountered someone who had a beautiful, like, mathematical model of the world, or of basically of infinities, not the world, but the different kinds of things like that. But at the end of it all, it was just abstract numbers. Now, it may be some use in an abstract realm, or it may be used to getting somewhere else. But so often you find that people mistake the map for the territory. Mm-hmm. And that happens in every tradition, Christianity, Islam, etc., where people are experts at the words, but they've never really tried applying them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they miss the level of abstraction, right?
Yeah. And I think for me, the application started happening only when I saw the suffering is so great that I cannot avoid it anymore, or when I realized that I wanna go for enlightenment, and the only way possible to do that is to apply it. Otherwise,
right. Well, that suffering that you're talking about is also the path. I mean, look at Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle woke up because the suffering became intolerable. Mm-hmm. And finally the ego collapsed, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. And when the ego collapses, then what's left? What's left is the non-egoic world where your ego's not the center of it. And that's essentially Satori, Kensho, or moksha. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes extreme adversity, and sometimes not so extreme adversity, just having your ego battered around for a while, mm-hmm. And people wake up if they're prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, not everybody needs that. I mean, well, although when you look at Krishnamurti, he lost his brother, then he woke up. Wasn't Ramana Maharshi, somebody in the village died and he was confronting death? I think so.
I know that.
Anyway, for many people, the suffering is a happy circumstance that they use to get further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Cool. I have other questions that I wanted to ask.
Good.
I was thinking about this, like the origination of the world, which is like the Big Bang and stuff, and like how we are like born physically in the world and stuff, and still people are like looking for the answer on how consciousness, like how the life arrived on Earth the first time. And the more I think about it, it seems to me that like the so-called like non-living matter or compounds combined together to form living compounds or living matter. Maybe what I'm calling non-living is actually not non-living, it's actually living. So maybe there's consciousness in everything, even in inert matter, and when they combine in certain proportion, then that leads to a process that starts the living process.
Okay, so let me make a distinction that you may find useful. Mm-hmm. According to Zenists, according to the Mahayana, according to others who have seen further, mm-hmm. and as far as I can tell, the things that you're describing occur within consciousness. Consciousness does not occur within them. Mm-hmm. Okay, now think about it that way and see how it changes it, because you just mentioned the Big Bang, which I don't think anybody's hanging on to anymore, unless you're in some branch of physics where you need to hang on to that because you've been doing it for 30 years the same way. It's basically what they're asking for is a miracle, right? There was nothing, and then there was a Big Bang, right?
Yeah.
And then in that Big Bang, and that's a beautiful theory. I'm not putting it down, and I'm not putting down physicists at all. I love this stuff, but I don't see how anyone can hold on to the Big Bang anymore. Certainly not with quantum mechanics, and certainly not with just. I mean, that's a big miracle to ask for, out of nothing, all of a sudden there was a Big Bang. And then they'll talk about, well, okay, then there's multiverse, and then you get into equally, but there's always a miracle down at the bottom of it that they need. But if you look at it differently, and I think this is correct, this has been my experience, that the universe is within consciousness, not the other way around. Consciousness is not within the universe. Now, now ask your questions and look at it from that perspective, just for fun.
So if everything is within consciousness, then there's life everywhere then.
One could say that. Life is a word, all right? So let's do a thought experiment. Let's say you go to sleep, you have a dream. And in that dream, you're walking through this wooded forest, and there's a big rock on the ground, more like a boulder, and you notice there's a greenish brown something. I mean, is it a plant? Is it a fungus? And it turns out it's a lichen, right? It's got little leaves and it's growing right on the rock. And you ask yourself in the dream, is this alive? And in the dream you say, yeah, this must be alive because it's growing and it's extracting nutrients from the rock, and it's using the sun, and it's using, it's a living creature. It's a lichen. But then ask yourself, is this boulder alive? What would you say?
I would say all of them are as alive as the me in that dream.
Right. Well, you see how life creates this. I mean, not life. The word life creates a bifurcation that might not be useful anymore. So to this day, we biologists, I am a biologist, so I can tell you that we struggle with defining, well, what is life and what's not life? Because when you get to things like viruses and prions and these very simple, proteins that also replicate and also are capable of some of the things that we might attribute to life. I mean, a very simple virus, let's just use that. Is it alive or not? Well, some people say yes, some people say no, but it could be that our framing, life or non-life, is the problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That we're trying to divide things up with a knife that's too dull.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so maybe that's not the right question.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking, that what am I calling life? Like, how do I define life? And I was thinking about it, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm calling a single-celled organism alive, or maybe algae, or
sure. I think nobody would argue with a single-celled organism is alive,
or amoeba. But then when I look at these like microscopic organism, they like the very basic one. What they're doing is they are going towards like source, like the energy, and then they are going away from anything that will destroy them.
Yes. So if they want to preserve themselves. Yeah. So viruses, for example.
Yeah. So if I look at that organism that is just doing these very few operations all the time.
Right.
And then if I look at myself, which is also doing all these operations, but in much more in number and more complex.
Approach or avoidance, I think is what you're describing.
Yeah, approach and avoidance, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of human life is approach and avoidance, right?
So if I'm also doing the same thing, if humans are also doing the same thing, then maybe just that the process, just the life process is what humans are. Humans are not entity, but maybe just a process that is happening in the world.
Okay, you say in the world, I say in consciousness.
Yeah, in consciousness, yeah, or somewhere.
And which truly, it takes a little while to get used to this notion. But then when you do that, a lot of these questions become very different questions. And some of the things that we're having such difficulty explaining, for example, relativity at the Planck length, not going to happen, right? Or singularities, for example, with a black hole. That's these things don't compute. Our theories break apart. They don't work anymore. Space turns into time, or not literally, but space and time become so merged that you can't meaningfully distinguish between the two as you approach, or as you enter a black hole, or the conservation of information that appears to occur on the surface of a black hole. So all these things, if we take another lens rather than the materialist lens, the materialist approach to it, and we say, hey, wait a minute, we've got this backwards. Now, that still leaves plenty of questions, right? A lot of questions, at least on this sweet earth, because we do have laws of physics, and we do have consensual realities and things like that. Yeah. And so there's still quite a bit of science to be done. But I think the questions become more intelligent when you realize that we're not going to get to the ontology, that the secret protects itself. And do you know what ontology means?
Let me
look it up for the audience, so they'll make sure they know what ontology is.
Yeah, it says the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being.
Or the branch of philosophy or science that deals with the nature of what is real, what is being, what is real. And so all of these still remain fascinating questions and fun to play with, right? But there's not this urgency to do or die, in the material world, because the material world obviously just comes and goes. I mean, they even our cosmologists say that the Earth is going to just be dissolved in what is it, some heat destruction at the end of the cosmos or the galaxy or something. That the Earth is going to fall into the sun and that this and that, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing material that lasts. Not even galaxies.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's encouraging, I encourage people to do is say, I realize I sound like a broken record, but really do contemplate. A galaxy is very big. The Milky Way galaxy is a big thing. How far across is the Milky Way galaxy? Ask the AI, please.
How far is the it's 100,000 light years across.
Okay. Traveling at the speed of light, it takes 100,000 years at the speed of light. Okay. And light is quite fast, right? It takes 100,000 years to get across this galaxy. Now, there are 150 billion galaxies in the universe. Billion. Or is it million?
I think it should be billions. How many?
Well, check.
Galaxies?
I don't want to get this wrong.
Yeah. The number of galaxies in this universe is estimated to be between 100 billion and 2 trillion.
Galaxies? Really? What source is that?
About 200 billion. This is space.com. It says 200 billion.
Okay, galaxies, right?
Yeah.
So that means the number of stars is going to be in the trillions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, those are very big numbers if you haven't really thought about them. So if people could just take a moment or a number of moments in their day, in their week, in their life, and just contemplate that fact, the distance, the space, right? That's in our best scientific estimations of the universe we live in. It really is useful when you're trying to open your mind. And for people who are more, have more of a science background, to do that with the Planck length and go to what is it, 10 to the minus 23rd meters. So it's really, 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 really small. I mean, a virus is gigantic compared to this space, right? The space of the Planck length. And then just contemplate, well, how could this be? How could this be? How could this actually exist, right? That's not something having anything to do with man, obviously.
Yeah, like the more I think about it, it just seems it's magical. Like there's
It's,
no
you're
other.
okay, very good. It's magical. At the very least, it's magical, right?
Yeah.
And so we live in a magical world, and we're magical creatures, but not if we go around thinking, oh, it's got to be solid to be real. Oh, it began at the Big Bang and we understand it and we're going to get, it's so arrogant of humanity when we're surrounded by mystery and magic but before your mind can begin to grok that stuff, you have to contemplate it, right? And I'm saying these are easy contemplations that anybody can do, and they are very, very useful because, if you don't understand the scale of what we're talking about, even then you won't understand the scale, but you'll have some idea of the, as you call it, magic that we're surrounded with. And so I recommend that people do this because it really pays dividends when your life it contains some of these beautiful mysteries and marvels, right? Like, how can this possibly be? And so, sorry, that's my little plug for contemplations, and meditations. There's a couple that are really, really good. So, all right. Next question, maybe, or we need to do more with that?
Yeah. No. I think that's spot on.
Okay, good.
I have another one. So this one is from one of your tweets. The tweet was from Krishnamurti. It says, "Find out whether it is possible to observe without any movement of thought." And then you added a comment saying, "This must be done without trying. Effort is noisy."
Yes. So if you try not to think, okay, which the thing about me is I've made all the mistakes myself, right? Because I'm an old man. So if you try not to think, it's very hard to try not to think.
Yeah.
At first, and then you will learn by trial and error, if nothing else, that you can't try not to think. You have to set up the conditions such that non-thinking can occur. And the reason you can't try, and actually I liked it because there's a neurobiological explanation too. Go to the next tweet.
Yeah, the next one on this one
and the bottom point.
It was about Grok 2. That one?
Yes.
Yeah, so Grok 2 says the concept of effortless action or Wu-Wei from Taoism is relevant here, which suggests achieving goals through non-striving or natural flow, aligning with the idea of doing something without trying. This post relates to Jiddu Krishnamurti's philosophy of observation without thought.
No, go to the neurobiology at the bottom. There's a little blurb on the default network.
It says the post mention of effort being noisy echoes the idea from neuroscience that during goal-directed behavior, the brain's action mode network heightens arousal and focuses attention, suggesting that conscious effort might disrupt this natural process.
Exactly. So now we have the neurobiology, the neuroscience to back some of these Dharma techniques up, right? And so we know something about mindfulness meditation, but this is beyond that. This is trying to be without thought, which is what Krishnamurti is pointing to. And we know that if we try to do that, we won't be able to do it because that trying activates attention, among other things, in the brain, and that's just going to create noise. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah. And I was thinking more about like the practical application of it. So the closest that I have gotten to is, so sometimes I am just like either walking or like just like sitting doing nothing, and then I think, okay, let my mind go wherever it wants. I'll just like observe in a relaxed manner. But still that seems like a conscious effort, even though very little, but still there is some effort involved in doing that.
Yes. And so those are not the right conditions.
Yeah. So I don't know how to.
Okay, let me tell you. The first thing to do is to continue what you're doing and continue observing your mind under all conditions, all circumstances. Get to know it. It's like having a pet dog, right? Your mind. a smart pet dog. Then in contemplation or meditation or just quiet sitting, observe it even more closely and then notice where the thoughts come from and where they go, which is a big question. And then especially notice the space in between thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then allow that space in between thoughts to grow larger. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's the difference between allowing and trying. Mm-hmm. Just allow the space to get larger on its own.
But still, it seems I am a little bit focusing on the space between the thoughts.
Yes, but gentle attention. And but you aren't activating anything because you've been watching your thoughts all along. Mm-hmm. So yes, you are standing in a field, but you've been in that field for 15 minutes. And so there's nothing new for the sensory apparatus to get excited about. Does that make sense?
Okay. Got it. Okay, so the mind is now.
I mean, let me give you another example. Let's say there's I don't know, the hum of an air conditioner in a house. Mm-hmm. At first, you notice it, right? Mm-hmm. But then, as the brain then naturally attenuates that, and makes it where you don't notice it anymore. It's just there. Mm-hmm. Now, if you focus on it, you will hear it again, right? Mm-hmm. But the brain automatically habituates and attenuates that signal getting to the thinking apparatus. Mm-hmm. You see?
Yeah.
So, like I say, what I'm trying to say is it's a gentle process, mm-hmm. and one that occurs when conditions are right. Mm-hmm. Now, your intent can be to notice what the space between your thoughts is getting longer, when the duration is getting longer. Mm-hmm. But see, that's the difference. The free will exists at another level than just the cortical, demands. Mm-hmm. It's a longer term thing. It's a longer phase thing. And so by reading, for example, the flower ornament scripture, the Avatamsaka, or other, texts that are concerned themselves with this thing, mm-hmm. or by doing the contemplations that I've outlined, among others, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
Then you're setting up the conditions for which this to occur naturally. Mm-hmm. It's like a golfer. He doesn't expect to hit a hole in one, at let's say, 75 yards. Mm-hmm. But if he's been preparing to his stroke and setting up the ball or whatever else they do, the way they follow through with their swing or whatever, and he's really been practicing, he set up the conditions by which it's much more likely mm-hmm. for him than it would be for you or me. Mm-hmm. I presume you don't play golf, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Do people play golf in India, I wonder?
I mean, some do.
Oh, good. That'd be good.
Yeah.
I don't know why this strikes me as a good thing. Okay. Next questions before we start to stop.
Next one is, so this one is from the book Teachings of Zen by Thomas Cleary.
Okay. Translated by Thomas Cleary.
Yeah. So this one is from this passage, The Reality of Mind. And here they are talking about door of concentration of kindness. Let me just maybe read the paragraph, and that will give a better idea of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
It says the earth and the sky are entirely composed of mind. But how do you explain the principle of being composed of mind? And how do you explain the reality of mind without form pervading the 10 directions? There is no part that does not come from compassion producing knowledge. There is no part that does not come from knowledge activating compassion. And there is no part that does not come from compassion and knowledge equally illumining the ocean of essential nature, pervading the universe, completely fluid and free. Knowing the light and the dark, matter and emptiness, compassion and knowledge equally, wind up at the door of concentration of kindness, with reward, response, and reality, independent and free, widely benefiting the world. The whole earth and open space are both manifestations of the door of concentration of kindness. That is why it is said that the reality of mind without form pervades the 10 directions. So here they're talking
My
about
God, that's beautiful. Who wrote that?
this is by Suan Shah, Huansha.
What century?
It doesn't say century here.
And it's Zen. It's not Chan.
Yes,
Is he Chinese or Japanese?
it's teachings of Zen.
No, I know, but Zen is the Japanese word for Chan in Chinese. Zen comes after Chan, which was developed to very high heights in China around the 7th, 8th centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moved to China, to Japan, and then they call it Zen. And since Japan has a very good public relations, they've had a very good public relations firm nationally for some time now. And so we use that word, but all right, well, be that as may, it's just gorgeous. So what's the question?
Yeah, my question is, so this compassion and this door of concentration of kindness.
Of kindness, right?
Yeah,
with a K.
Yeah, with a K, yeah.
Okay, all right. So look, all things in this universe are interdependent, right? Everything depends on everything else. Now, this guy has clearly experienced Satori, right? And he knows that what it is really is an ocean of love. I mean, it's just a vastness of love and intelligence beyond anything that humans can imagine. And when it hits the brain, it's really quite something. It's overwhelming, right? So he knows that already. And he knows the nature of this insight is kind, of course, because everything is you. There's nothing that isn't, like Jesus said, right? You know, the least of what you do to the least of these, you do it to me, right? And this is a universal teaching. And so they know, a priori, they know that kindness and love are the nature of ontology, right? You can't really put it into words. And they also know that, I mean, if it's Zen, they've gone through quite a bit of intellectual preparation, right? Which is another word for, he's using the word, what word does he use? Wisdom, or what word does he use?
Knowledge.
Okay. So knowledge already includes the love, the kindness, the compassion, because you don't know which way's up until you know that basic facts about the reality, the ontology of our universe. Now, wisdom, you acquire wisdom through knowledge. And it's a little bit different because the difference between the Tibetan or the Sanskrit and the Zen and the Chan, but wisdom and knowledge or understanding are all kind of the same thing. But it's wisdom and understanding of what thing? It's a thing that's not a thing, but it's compassionate, it's kind, it's love, it's truth, and it's beauty. And you can't go much further than that in trying to express it in words, because it's not really of this world. You know, it's really something amazing. It is, but it isn't. And so that's like a poem, a beautiful Zen poem, beautifully translated too. Read it again, please, slowly.
Yeah. So the title is The Reality of Mind.
Okay, so this is the reality of mind. Okay, good.
The earth and the sky are entirely composed of mind. But how do you explain the principle of being composed of mind? And how do you explain the reality of mind without form pervading the 10 directions? There is no part that does not come from compassion producing knowledge. There is no part that does not come from knowledge activating compassion. And there is
okay, so stop right there. So first of all, he says, how do you explain this, right?
Yeah.
A thing that's impossible to explain. And then if he has understanding, which basically understanding, when you understand, you know that the place is made of compassion and love. I mean, it doesn't seem like that to humans, because we're all involved at another level altogether. We're lost in the forest of our own thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at another level, that's all there is. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so he knows that there's complete interdependence between wisdom and compassion, between knowledge and understanding and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of the same thing in a way that you cannot put in sentences, normal sentences. So read the last line that he wrote there. What was it? Last 4 lines. Read the last 4 lines.
There is no part that does not come from compassion producing knowledge. There is no part that does not come from knowledge activating compassion. And there is no part that does not come from compassion and knowledge equally illumining the ocean of essential nature, pervading the universe completely
okay, the
fluid
essential
and
nature,
free.
the Buddha nature. So if we go up to the beginning, in his first sentence, I believe, he sets up the fact that the earth and the sky are within mind.
Yeah, are entirely composed of mind.
Right. And then mind is not made up of any parts. So that's why he could say it's completely, comes from this, or how does he put it?
Uh-huh.
The parts are equal parts.
Yeah.
He's dividing it for the reader, but in reality, they're all the same thing: wisdom, compassion, love, truth, beauty, and mind, and the cosmos. Now, as we try and explain it at this level, when we're lost in these scary woods of human thought, then we break it up so people can get some idea of which way to head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's trying to do. That's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Could you I'd like to share that with everybody. Maybe you could make a copy of it and send it to me, and I'll tweet it or something.
I can send you a copy of it. Like just write it down, or take a picture of the page and send it to you.
Take a picture and then have the phone translate the text. I mean, suck up the text.
Okay, sounds good. I'll do that.
Or I'll do that. Okay. Any other questions before we stop?
So in this one, when they say the door of concentration of kindness, I was thinking that maybe there is I don't know how to explain compassion as an emotion or mental state, but feeling like loved or feeling love, at least that I have experienced as an emotional state. So I thought that maybe there's a meditation or some kind of concentration that can get me to kindness or something like
compassion.
that.
Okay. Well, the Buddhists specialize in this, and what you would do is you go to, I think it's called the meta practice or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, or exchanging self for other. Mm-hmm. So go to, do you have Karen McDonald's book called Introduction to Meditation?
Yeah, I have it somewhere, yeah.
See if she has, she should have a chapter on these particularly Tibetan practices, exchanging self for other. Okay. And it's very simple. I mean, you could do it very complicated. They do. They mix in the breathing, right? And mm-hmm. it's a whole ritualistic kind of beautiful meditation. Mm-hmm. Or you could just imagine, instead of that poor guy, right, whose house burned down, or whose kid was crippled by a bomb, put yourself in the shoes of that person and say, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." Mm-hmm. Right? And just do that. Make it a habit. Mm-hmm. And look at both sides of everything always. Mm-hmm. Okay, sir? Okay. But you know what the Dalai Lama says, for the practical purposes, and he's the top of the Mahayana food chain, mm-hmm. He says, my religion is kindness. Mm-hmm. But he's way up there in intellect, wisdom, compassion, and all that other stuff too. Mm-hmm. So, but as shorthand, my religion is kindness, which is, of course, we have to be kind, mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Okay, sir.
Can you just repeat that thing where you said, "Look at the guy whose house burned down," and then you said something that I missed.
Okay, imagine you're in a part of the world that's being bombed by some larger power, yeah. And your child is crippled for life, or worse, killed, mm-hmm. by some bomb that somebody decided to drop on your apartment building. Mm-hmm. Or imagine it's you, mm-hmm. And you'll never walk with your legs again because your legs have been crushed in a collapsing building. Mm-hmm. Just just do those thought contemplations.
Okay.
Or you could go to the Tibetan. The Tibetans are good too because they have a way of taking it in, but be careful with it because basically they take on the suffering of others. Like Jesus, like it's very Christian kind of stuff. So be careful. If there's questions, let me know.
Got it.
All right.
Cool.
Adios.
Adios. Thank you.
Take good care. Ciao.
Bye.